Hi everyone and welcome to Book Boop. My name is Rachel and today I'm going to be talking about book series that I haven't read and I honestly probably won't. This is a little bit of a controversial topic because I have 6 different book series I'm going to mention today, all that are very, very popular, and I honestly probably won't ever read because I'm not terribly interested in them. Now, I do want to just say before I get started that if I mention any book series that you absolutely love and you adore them and you're like, how dare you? I'm not doing this video to offend anybody or anything. I'm just talking about some book series that I know people really, really like, but I just don't really have a whole lot of interest in and I just don't really want to read. If you want to try to convince me below, if I mention a series you really love and you're like, oh my goodness, please read this, let me know below. Just let me know. See if you can convince me. I'm not saying that there's like no possible way I'll ever read these, but these are ones that I'm just currently just not that interested in and just don't really want to read. So let's go ahead and jump in. So the first series that I'm going to mention today, and I've got my list here, so apologies if I look off camera for a second, is the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. Now I know this series is huge. The last book in the series just came out this past year. There's just so much love surrounding this series. And it's also one of those series I think people really either love it or they just hate it. I've never personally read any of these. When I first read the description for the very first book, it actually sounded kind of interesting. And I was like, that could be kind of cool. But for me personally, I get really, really intimidated by long series. With the exception of maybe like Harry Potter, because I read those when I was younger. But when I see a series that's like 7 books long, which I think it's 6 or 7 books, I don't remember, I probably should have done my research. But Throne of Glass series is pretty long. The books are pretty beefy. I've also heard there's a lot of characters and it's hard to keep track sometimes. And it's a pretty heavy world. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of world building. And I've heard from some people that the storytelling, some of the portions of the books or even some specific books in whole are rather slow and just sort of plotting. And so that doesn't really sound that interesting to me. I'm like, I don't want to be in a series and feel like I get stuck in a series where it just sort of plods along. Because I'm a completionist. If I start a series, I gotta finish it. I know that sounds weird. Some people have no problem DNFing books, and there's some that I have DNF'd, but some of them just plod along. So Throne of Glass, I always try to get through series when I can, and that one I don't even want to start. I don't even want to start it because it just looks intimidating. And I know some people have said they just really didn't like it. I know some people do love it. I don't know. I'm just afraid to jump into it. If you want to try to convince me, go ahead. The next series after that is Don't Shoot the Messenger, the Mortal Instruments series by Cassandra Clare, or all the other random series they're in that are linked to that. So I had never read any of the books before. I saw the trailer for the movie. I thought it looked really fascinating. I was like, that's a cool concept. I like that. Went to go see the movie. It was terrible. I hated the movie. And I know people that love the books didn't like the movie either. So I know they aren't claiming that it's like some great representation of the series, but I didn't like the movie. And so I was like, well, people really like it, right? So maybe I should try it. So I tried reading the very first book and I DNF'd it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't, I don't know what it was. I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't get invested in the story. I couldn't get invested in the characters. Maybe it's because I saw the movie first and that just tainted it for me. And I was just like, I just had a bad taste in my mouth. But I know people really love these. I didn't grow up reading them or anything. And I'm not interested. I'm sorry. I know a lot of people, especially in BookTube, love Cassandra Clare, love her books and all the Mortal Instruments stuff and are obsessed with them. And I hate that I don't know anything about them and I don't really like them, what I've seen, and I don't really want to read it. So that's another one. That was the one I was afraid to talk about because I know people really, really love that series. The next one, this is again another one I didn't grow up with. This isn't one that I didn't read when I was a kid because I think a lot of people kind of read these as they were a kid and so they're a beloved series to them. But the Percy Jackson series by Rick Riordan. I have never read any of those. I haven't seen the movie either. I haven't been overly interested in it, mainly because for some reason, Greek mythology does not really interest me. It interested me when I was in school, when I was younger, and it was like a fun portion of history to learn about. But as an adult, for some reason, Greek mythology is not a topic I'm overly interested in. So I'm not really interested in reading a series that focuses a lot on Greek mythology. So that's when I'm just like, I'm just not terribly interested in. And I know it's another series that people really love. Some of them will say it's one of their favorite series of all time, especially from their childhood. So but I'm just not interested. I'm not interested in reading about these kids are supposed to be descendants of people from Greek mythology, and it just, I don't know, it doesn't fascinate me, and I just don't really want to read it. So I don't really have any other explanation other than that. All right, so after that, the next series I have not read and probably won't is the Divergent series by Veronica Roth. I've also never read these. I've never seen the movies either. I saw trailers for the movies, and I think I remember these movies were kind of coming out around the same time as the Hunger Games series, and for some reason, it reminded me a lot of Hunger Games, just the feel of it, and because of that, it felt like a copy to me, and so I didn't feel like reading it, and I still haven't been interested in reading it. It just feels too much dystopian like Hunger Games, and I could be completely wrong. It could be very different. Probably huge fans that are watching this video right now are like, are you kidding me? They're so different, but to me, they just look the same. And on top of that, I heard that the third book, the last book in the series, was a huge disappointment to fans. I've heard that the ending was one that people just hated and they just wanted to chuck the book across the room. That's another reason I want to read it. I don't want to get invested in the story and in the last book just be like, I don't want to do that. So the Divergent series, I also am just not interested in. I don't even want to see the movies. Like the movies to me didn't even interest me. I was just like, no, thank you. All right, after that, let's move into a couple more that sound kind of semi-related. These are both more in the adult fantasy realm, and it is the Game of Thrones series by George R.R. Martin. I am not really, honestly, interested in it at all. I have not watched the show either. Gasp, I know. My husband does watch it. He enjoys it, but it's a little bit too dark and brutal for me, a little bit too bloody, a little bit too much nudity and sex stuff involved. I don't feel overly comfortable watching a whole lot of that, so I haven't been interested in the show. And then in regards to the books, I've heard the books are actually, the writing style is very dry. There's a lot of descriptions that kind of go on, and a lot of the story and plots just kind of are really slow. So I just heard it's a very dry writing style. And I've also heard that there's also a lot of just really brutal stuff in the books too that can make you kind of uncomfortable. So there's a lot of things having to do with that just don't sound fun to me. And it just sounds horrible. And I feel like it would be like reading, like required reading type of situation for me. I just feel like, ugh. And it reminds me too much of trying to read Lord of the Rings, because I tried to read Lord of the Rings. I read The Fellowship of the Ring and hated it. I love the movies. I love the Lord of the Rings movies, but I did not like reading them. I tried reading them and it was just so dry. And Tolkien's descriptions were just so lengthy that it was just boring. And I love Tolkien. I really respect him as an author. I think he's incredible, but I don't know. When I heard what people said about George R.R. Martin and Game of Thrones, it sounded like my experience of trying to read Lord of the Rings just wasn't for me. The last series that I think I will probably never touch, I know I won't, is the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson. So my husband has been reading through this book series for several years now. It is a 14-book series. All the books are massive. And when my husband made the comment that, oh, well, books like 4 through 10 are kind of slow and kind of but once you get to book 11, it gets good. I'm like, I don't want to be reading that much, investing that much time in a series that takes that long to get to a spot where it gets interesting. Mainly, he said, once Brandon Sanderson takes over, he said that then it gets exciting and then it gets really good. I'm like, there's a lot of books you got to read to get there. And there's a lot of characters to keep up with. I think a lot of the character names are kind of similar and it's hard to keep track of all the characters. And there's just so many storylines involved they can get confusing. And that, to me, just sounds awful. Sorry. And I know my husband has been enjoying the series. I know he's looking forward to being done, though, and he's almost done. He's on book 14, and he's legitimately been working on this series for years. And we're both very excited about him being done, so you can move on to some other stuff because he's just been dedicated to this series. It's ridiculous. So anyways, those are all the series at the moment I can think of that I'm probably never going to touch. Never read, not interested in, but they're beloved series and people love them. Do you have any series that you also just don't want to touch? Or maybe you even tried and you DNF'd and you're like, I can't do this. Or you're like, why do people like this? Let me know down below. Or also, like I said before, if some of the favorite series I mentioned today are your favorite series or something, then comment below, see if you can convince me. Say, hey, you really should try this out. But there you go. That's my list. Take or to leave it. On this side of the screen over here is my logo. If you click on that, you can subscribe to my channel and follow me on my book journey. On this side over here is a suggestion for another video if you want to watch another one right now. But thank you so much for watching. You rock, and don't forget to keep reading. Bye.